Maybe we should start by introducing ourselves.
I think that's a great idea.
For anyone who doesn't know, I'm Rebecca, and I live in an RV. My husband and I sold our house about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, and moved into an RV. We've been living and working from all over the country ever since. I'm a recipe developer and a food photographer. I was doing that before we moved into the RV. So during this tour, I'll definitely show you some of the considerations that we had when we were choosing what floor plan and what model we wanted for the RV. I was very concerned about making what I do work from this space. And so, yeah, and in most RVs, I don't think it would work, but we found one that works great in there. So, and you can find me here on Substack under Let's Get Lost. And also, I have 2 recipe blogs, A Little and a Lot, and Of Batter and Dough. You can find me there as well. And I'm here with Nikki Sizemore. Nikki, I met several months ago here on Substack. And Nikki is one of these people that even before I had talked to her in person, I don't know. I felt like you would be my friend.
I knew that about you. There was such resonance between us, and it's interesting how that comes through in the work that we do and the words that we write. I was like, you're reflecting everything I feel.
Yeah, they're just those people that we meet in the world, and there's kind of an instant connection. And in this case, it was through Nikki's podcast and through her writing that I just knew that I just knew you're my people. So, and Nikki, tell everybody where to find you if they're not familiar with you and your work.
Yeah. So I physically live in the Hudson Valley of New York. We're about an hour and a half north of New York City. I'm also a food writer and recipe developer. I have 3 cookbooks. My 4th cookbook is actually coming out in January. That's called Mind, Body, Spirit, Food, which is also the name of my podcast and my Substack. Kind of took a turn. I was a blogger, a food blogger for a long time, had a burnout, had a kind of like a spiritual awakening in some senses. And started Mind, Body, Spirit, Food in 2023 as a way to kind of unite really me. Before I was kind of like just doing food and doing other things in my personal life. And Mind, Body, Spirit, Food is really about using food as a way to connect more deeply to ourselves. I mean, it's also recipes, all gluten-free because I'm gluten-free and so are my daughters. But it takes things a little bit deeper and how we can nourish our whole selves, not just physically, but everything else. Yeah, I think that I also have a blog called From Scratch Fast with hundreds of recipes there too. But I think that's the long and short of it. I don't know.
Well, your podcast is wonderful. You have incredible guests on your podcast, and I've made several of your recipes, and they're all fantastic. Very easy to follow, very delicious.
Thank you.
So. So Nikki and I had a conversation. Man, it's been at least a month or 2 ago.
Yeah.
About how we both do the same thing from 2 completely different spaces. Nikki has renovated her kitchen. When did you renovate, Nikki?
We renovated in 2020, and I'll share the story about that as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, perfect. So she does this in a renovated kitchen where she got to choose kind of where everything is and how it's laid out. And I do the same thing in an RV kitchen. I have not made the modifications that you've made to yours, but I have figured out how to make things work. And we just renovated our RV, changing out the flooring and the countertops and all of that as well. And I got to make some decisions about how things were and where they are, and to make my life a little bit better as well. So we're going to share both of those things with you.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that it doesn't the size of your space doesn't matter. Like before we've lived in this house since 2011, but before that we had a tiny kitchen and then an even tinier kitchen in New York City. So it really is about making the space work for you. And so for you guys watching, I hope, maybe you'll get inspiration and tips, but also like little things that bring us joy and those things that bring me joy in my space. Just reflect on that for yourself because that might be different for you. So it's, because I have like this situation in my kitchen isn't what makes me enjoy the space or make me enjoy cooking. It's like an added bonus, but I know that we all have spaces and all have things in our own spaces that we can like tinker and modify to bring more joy. And sometimes that's just decoration and like little plants and fun things that light us up.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So, Nikki, why don't you start us out? Give us a tour of the layout of your kitchen and talk
Yeah.
about how you renovated it a few years ago to kind of change things and make it work for you.
So I'm going to be like, I feel like selfie girl because I'm holding this. I don't have anybody helping me today. Rebecca's husband is helping her today. So it's going to be a little weird, but I'm going to give you a little tour, but I also we also made a YouTube video. I have an ancient YouTube channel called, it's now Mind, Body, Spirit, Food, but I think it's YouTube/From Scratch Fast. And I have a whole before and after process. So you can really see like the problems of the kitchen before. I'm going to do like a 360. We have an open living space. So the kitchen is really in the heart of our home, which is what drew me to this house. When I looked at 47 houses when we were moving, and
Wow.
I walked in this house, and it was like, story. Like I just knew that this was our space. But we waited 8 years before we renovated the kitchen. I mean, some of that was just literally budget constraints, but some of that, well, I just have to say, I'm really grateful that we waited that long because by the time we renovated, I was very intentional. I knew exactly what I wanted, and the process was so much more seamless. And I think the decisions were so easy to make. And so we kept the basic layout the same. So you'll see this is our backyard. The sink is here, stove is behind me, and then our kitchen table and dining room are through there. It was not in the budget to change any of the major structure, but also I liked the layout. One thing that we did do was that this kitchen island here used to extend all the way here. So it was a big L shape. So when we walked through the back door to like come into the kitchen, like you had to go all the way around and the flow was really weird. You're kind of like either stuck in the kitchen area or stuck here. So our good friend who's an architect who helped us with the design had the idea to make a cut through and keep this nice big island here, which I really am grateful for because this is where we end up every time we have people over. Like we just end up hanging out at the island.
Yeah.
When we moved in, there is a lot of space between the back stove and the kitchen island, like a really big gap. So my best friend lives in Vermont. She has a company called Vermont Farm Table, and I had them build me. This was right when we moved in. This like center island,
Oh, I
and it
love
was
that.
such a gift because now I have. Oh, this is usually where I do all my chopping because I can chop and just turn around and the stove is right here. I'm not like walking all of those steps back to the stove. And it creates like a little bit more flow. So when we have people over, my husband loves to help me cook. That's kind of what our form of entertainment is out here in the Hudson Valley. We cook, but we can all be. Now my daughters as well. I've got a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. But now we can all have like stations in the kitchen and be cooking together. So
Love that.
that's the general layout. And then I want to hear about yours, and then we'll get into some of the components that I was really intentional about when we.
Yeah, that sounds great. So first of all, I love when you did the circle around. I love that pop of color in that bright yellow chair. That
Yes.
is fantastic. And also I love that your kitchen sink overlooks your backyard. And I wouldn't have wanted to change that.
It was interesting. That was one of the best things that happened. We weren't going to replace that window. And it ended up somehow, I think it cracked. The window cracked. And it was almost like the universe was like, you're going to really appreciate it if you replace it. Because it had been a window with like panes and stuff. So we instead
Oh,
placed it with just a giant open window. And it
I
is
love it.
one of my favorite things that ended up happening through the renovation because we have such a big our garden. We've got little garden beds out there. It's just right there. And it's like my little moment there.
Yeah,
Doing
no, it's really great. I like that a lot. So yeah, and the layout is perfect. I love that you separated the island and created that flow through. Brilliant idea. Yeah. And the island is huge. And also I would imagine that by doing that it also gave you some additional room for drawer and cupboard space that
Yeah,
you could
I'll
put in
show
the
you the
house.
storage. It actually
Yeah.
created storage in the front and we have storage in the back. So
Okay. Yeah,
we
that's
have a
great.
lot more storage now. Oh, and another thing I just want to mention really quick
Yeah, yeah.
is our kitchen cabinets used to stop. There was a gap between the top of the cabinet and
Yeah.
the ceiling, and we extended them to the ceiling. My husband and I are both tall, which helps. Like, I'll show you where I store some things, and my mom, she comes over and she's like, I can't even access that. But it's really much easier for like props and stuff. Like, it just expanded our storage.
Yeah, yeah, so
Yeah,
much
and
extra room.
it made the space look so much bigger because
Yeah,
it just draws your eyes up.
right, right. Well, I am not tall. I am 5 feet tall, or 5 feet even. So, I'll show you the first thing that I use in my kitchen all the time.
Okay. I love that it's there for you.
It is always here because I actually can't reach anything in my kitchen cabinets.
Wow.
Our cabinets are pretty tall, but I mean, like I can reach the bottom shelf, but not even, I can't even get back into the bottom shelf. So I spend half my life standing on that stool inside the kitchen.
Amazing.
So when we decided that we wanted to move into an RV, we had no experience RVing. We had never spent one night in any camper of any kind. Um, the first night we ever spent in any camper, we had already sold our house and bought the RV.
No way.
Yeah. So when we first started looking at RVs, we didn't even know what questions to ask. We didn't know what options were available. We knew nothing about it at all whatsoever. And so I don't know. I think we probably went through at least 100 different models before we started to get a feel for what we wanted and what was possible. So we have a toy hauler, and that means that we have a motorcycle, and so we can haul the motorcycle inside the RV while we travel. And we knew we wanted a toy hauler because we knew we wanted to bring our motorcycle with us. And so typically, I think toy haulers, the design of them, um, people who buy a toy hauler don't really care that much about spending much time in the kitchen. They don't really care about cooking. They want to haul their toys, right? They're
Yeah.
built to haul motorcycles and ATVs and that type of thing. And so I think probably most people that buy a toy hauler aren't concerned about cooking at all. So most toy hauler kitchens have this like big area to haul your toys, and then they have like a big area for like hanging out in a living room area, and then they have a kitchen that is like the size of a refrigerator. Like it is tiny, tiny, tiny. Or the other thing that a lot of them have is a kitchen where you're kind of like boxed in to this little space, and so you might have a little bit more counter room because it's like an L shape, probably similar to how yours was, only on a smaller scale. But I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to bring my camera into the kitchen with
Yeah.
me to take process shots. So I shoot with artificial light, and so I use a stand with a flash, and then I have my tripod and camera, and in most of those kitchens, I couldn't have fit in the kitchen along with my equipment. It wouldn't have worked. So we went through RV after RV after RV, and then we finally found this one. And my husband is my cameraman today. He is graciously taken time out of his own work day to do this. So he's going to follow me around a little bit. So thank you very much, Justine. So this model, let's look into the kitchen. Um, so this is a very open it's a very open kitchen.
Yeah.
And that this was really the first model that we saw that had this kind of an open model. And there were two reasons that we really liked it. First of all, it's a pretty good size for a toy hauler kitchen. And then secondly, because it's open, I have room to put my camera and my lighting stand here and still be in the kitchen making the food. So that made a huge difference. And then the other thing that I was very concerned about, and it hasn't been much of a problem, is this oven. I'm so envious of your oven back there.
Mhm.
It's gorgeous. This oven, so a lot of RV ovens have very small ovens that you basically can't do anything in. This one is almost full size, but it's 2 inches smaller than a normal size oven. And I wasn't sure if that would cause me problems when I was timing recipes for baking.
Yeah.
So the fact that the oven was on the edge of the counter, we thought, well, it'll be a major project, but if we have to swap it out for a larger oven, we probably
Mm.
can. And so those things kind of influenced choosing this model. Also, this model had a lot more cupboard space than a lot of other
Oh,
RVs that we saw. The cupboard space is a little bit deceptive. They like to do things like put two cabinets here, and it looks like you have a lot more space. But
yeah.
really, it should be like an accordion door that folds out into one cabinet because each cabinet is like super super tiny.
Amazing though. It does not look like an RV. I haven't spent any time in RVs, but if one were to see your space right now, it really does look like a kitchen in a beautiful apartment or something. It doesn't even,
Thank
it's
you.
just so warm and inviting. And then you've got your living space with the couch. Like it looks so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I think if you go over here and then show it from this, yeah, angle. So one of the things that we did there, like it's a little bit better view of the whole thing. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we did recently is we changed out these countertops. They were like a white, like solid surface Corian type material, and they weren't terrible. They just weren't something that I really loved. And I wanted butcher blocks since the day we moved in, and earlier this year we finally replaced them all. It was a huge project, and I don't think either one of us ever want to do it again.
Yes. I should have said with you on this.
But I love them. So the other thing about this space that we really liked, and we just remodeled this as well, is we have this big table here as well.
Yeah.
So the table, this is where I do most of my photography. And it also, because it's in such close proximity to the kitchen, it becomes kind of a part of the kitchen. When I'm working on several different things, the table gets used as much as the rest of the space.
Yeah.
And a lot of RVs that we looked at didn't have that table. Now, when we moved in, the table was actually turned the other direction and it was much smaller. It was a very narrow table. And so one of the things that we did is turn it to face this way. And that gave us the ability to make it much larger. It's probably 6 or 8 inches wider than it was when we first moved in. And, every little bit seems to matter when you're in a small space.
Yeah.
So this is like, it's a little bit like my kitchen island.
Amazing. I can't believe how big that table is. How many people can you fit around the table?
It's really just four. I suppose we could put one on the end if we really wanted to, but four is pretty much the max.
Amazing. Wow. Okay, so I want to get into like specific elements and storage because you must be a genius with how you store stuff. And I, of course, I have a lot more space, but there were a few things that we did really, really purposefully to make the cooking process a little bit more streamlined.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'll jump in and then you can
Yeah,
jump in.
please.
One of the things that we did, this was actually in our old kitchen, but it was really ugly. It's called an appliance garage. And when we hired, one of the biggest places our budget went was a mill worker for the cabinets. We looked at IKEA. We looked at all of these things, but there was a husband and wife team who are local, who are amazing. And we ended up going with them. At that time, it wasn't even that much more money that we renovated in 2020. This was like before the start of like everybody doing renovations. We kind of got in right before. And they were a fairly new company. We loved working with them. And that way I could customize the drawers, like the inserts of the drawers and everything. And they built this for us. So I wanted an appliance garage, which is kind of what it sounds like. This is this accordion door. And in here, I don't know if you guys can see, but I've got my stand mixer, my food processor, and my Vitamix. So that way I don't have to ever, I mean, one of my cookbooks is a food processor cookbook. And my biggest tip is to make it accessible if you want to use these kind of tools to help, like mine is like my sous chef in the kitchen is what I call it. But having to schlep it above and, into cabinets and below cabinets is a big block. So that way they're always available for me. They're all plugged in. I just slide them out and then use them. That's one of my favorite elements about the kitchen as far as storage goes.
Do you have power outlets right close by there as well?
The outlet is inside the appliance garage, and they're on. This is a friend of mine on these mats, these little mats that are slippery. So they just slide in and out. So I never have to unplug and plug them back in. And then my other favorite thing, if you watch that YouTube video, you will see the state of our pantry. Before it was just a little closet over here, and it was a disaster zone. It's still kind of a disaster for all of you who love organization. I'm like a little bit organized, a little bit chaotic. But this pantry is a game changer for me because we did all of these pull-out drawers. So now I have so much more storage. And although it might look like it's all kind of piled up, like there is a rhyme or reason in my head about where everything goes. The bottom ones are for like the kids' snacks and all the breakfast stuff. So when we renovated in 2020, which was 5 years ago, my little one was young. She was 5. So that way they could access stuff. I wasn't always getting the snacks for them. They had the freedom to pull that out and do what they wanted to. So I would say those two design elements were really game changer for me. And then some of the drawer inserts too, which I know you can even go onto the Container Store now, and all of these different places. If you don't do the custom design, they sell these kind of inserts. So like all of my spices, they built these little drawers, or my knife drawer over here. Wherever, I don't think you can see that, can you?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
And then for the island, we used to have cabinets down here. And so I was always reaching in and pulling pots out and doing drawers, which I think is that's just what's done. I don't even think people are building cabinets anymore because it's so much more functional to pull out the drawer, to stack the pots. You're not reaching, you're just lifting. So
agreed.
Those are kind of our favorite storage elements. What about you?
All right. So I have so many hiding places for my stuff. I'm going to start actually by showing you the living room. So this is our living area. And I have all of my baking supplies in
Wait, is that the couch? Did you just lift up the couch cushion?
Yeah, this is the ottoman.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I want that too, even though
so this sofa, and you want to turn it towards the sofa. Yeah, there we go. So this sofa is Home Reserve, and Home Reserve makes all of these sofas and ottomans for very small spaces. And so they come, you assemble it, and then you put the fabric on. The fabric can be taken off and thrown in the washing machine or changed out or whatever, which is really great in an RV. Things are always getting dirty. But really what we bought it for is the storage. So all my baking supplies are in the ottoman.
Wow.
And then also in the couch cushions, if I were to lift all of those up, there's storage under every couch cushion.
That is brilliant.
So I have storage containers, like Tupperware type things underneath one. Underneath this cushion over here, I have pots and pans and my pasta maker.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, yeah, so I don't know what I would do without having that storage, especially for my baking supplies. Baking supplies take up a lot of work.
Yeah.
I write a baking blog. That is something that I do on the regular. And so having a nice supply of different kinds of flour. Also, underneath the bench around our table, there's storage as well. And that's where I keep all my cake pans.
Oh my gosh. Did they design it? Was that their design as well? I just think that's
No.
so smart.
We put that in. Yeah. So
Okay.
the bench did not have storage in it. That was something that we did when we remodeled.
Wow.
And it's great. It's really great to have that there. And then I'll show you that I also keep stuff behind the couch and kind of in the corner back here. So I use photo boards for photography.
Mhm.
And I have all of my photo boards back behind the couch.
Gosh, smart.
So yeah, so we've got all sorts of photo boards back here. And then back in the corner, back here, is where I keep my camera equipment.
Oh,
So got
amazing.
camera and the photo boards and everything right there. Now we have, I guess I'm going to start calling it the appliance garage because up above the refrigerator, this cabinet is where I keep my Vitamix blender and my food processor and a whole bunch of other appliances. It's a very deep cabinet. And so if something gets pushed way back on the back, even with the stool, I can't reach it. I have to get Steve to, to like dig it out for me. So it's not nearly as convenient as yours, but it is kind of amazing. When we moved into this RV, I thought I was going to have to give up a lot of appliances, and I haven't really had to give up anything.
No.
I use my Vitamix blender and I use my food processor almost every single day. I just keep them up there and store them out.
Yeah.
I also, my KitchenAid is also something that I would not be able to live without. And you had said that your appliances are on these little mats so you can slide them in and out. And this is also on a
Yeah.
board that slides. And I feel like it's this simple thing that I wish I had done years ago.
Yeah.
Because you move appliances around and so putting them on a surface like that where you can just slide them around is like this simple thing that makes your life so much easier.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So, and then there's two things that we had custom made. My brother is a woodworker, and I wanted real wine glasses. When you live in an RV and you travel, all of your dishware and everything gets like we're traveling and going over bumpy roads and it shakes around in there. And so I thought I'm not going to be able to have wine glasses. They're going to break.
Yeah.
And also wine glasses take up a lot of space and I don't have enough covered space for them. And so I had this idea of hanging them underneath this cabinet. And I thought, well, I'll just wrap them as we travel to kind of keep them safe. And then when we are parked, I'll hang them up. And my brother came up with this design, and each wine glass is in its own little compartment.
Wow.
It's magnetic here. And these are felt lined compartments. And so I don't have to take them out when we travel. They stay there on travel and they're perfectly safe. Isn't that ingenious?
That is genius. I'm like, you
Yeah,
got
and
to
on
take
the
that.
side, here, I'll come over here so you can see the side of it. In the side, there's wine bottle
My
storage. And same thing, they're in like a little cradle. It's felt lined, so they're protected in there and they don't move. So I don't have to move any of that when you travel. They just stay put. So that I love. And then also, spices were a huge problem for me because you pile them into a drawer. Your drawer divider is great because you need some sort of organization system. But I didn't want to devote an entire drawer to them.
Yeah.
And so we had this space here down by the oven. And so my brother built this spice rack.
Team, but that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so he built the spice rack, and same thing, the shelves has a little lip which holds them in while we travel, so I don't have to take them out.
Oh, smart.
So yeah, so those are really most of the storage spaces. Now, I will tell you that we have space underneath our bed as well that I also store some supplies, mostly for photography, for
Yeah.
like accessories and things like that for
So how you
photography.
get up there?
Oh, that's right. My husband just pointed out that I'm not going to demonstrate, but on the top of our cabinets, there's a little bit of space, and the cabinets have a lip that holds things in. So I keep extra serving bowls that I don't use very often up there, and I also keep our Ninja Creamy up there, which I am obsessed with. I
Daughters have been begging me to get that.
I love it. I love ours. I make frozen yogurt with it all the time. We have it for breakfast, and it's fantastic. But in order to get to it, I have to climb on top of the cabinet, on top of the counter. So I like stand up on the counter, pull it down. But it works.
You maximize the storage. That's amazing. And such amazing tips, because you're right. The jostling, like these are things I wouldn't have thought about.
Well, and there's a couple of other things that we had to do because, you're always thinking when you're traveling, how are you going to contain the things in cupboards? So one of the things that I feel like would have been useful when we lived at a house to maximize cupboard space is things like, um,
Mm,
we put a shelf in there and a basket, so the basket can kind of hold everything. I can pull the basket in and out. So the basket is there to be contained, but also, even if it didn't need to be contained, not having to dig back there.
yeah.
Your drawers that pull out of your pantry are fantastic, but if you don't have something like that, putting everything in a basket that you can pull out, I think
That's
is
smart.
really, really, really useful. And then same within our refrigerator. Again, like when you're in an RV, everything, including everything in your refrigerator, is moving around while you're traveling. And so one thing that we did is get these plastic containers to kind of hold everything in.
Smart. Yeah.
But also, I think I would do that whether you
Yeah.
lived in an RV or not, because there are many times when, I have a container of condiments and I want what's in the
Yeah.
and I can pull the entire thing out. And so
Yeah. We don't do that. And as I'm sitting here, I'm like, we absolutely should, because the fridge, it's interesting. This is the same that we didn't change like the size of the fridge, but for whatever reason, oh, you know what? It did get a little bit smaller because the stove
Okay.
got bigger. Our last stove was smaller, but our fridge is really small. I know it doesn't look that way from the outside, but it actually, like, the state of my fridge is kind of a mess, but it actually does not have a lot of storage space. So we had to get a second fridge in the basement because, as you know, like doing photo shoots and stuff, there's just a lot of production, and I can't put a sheet tray in the freezer. So I'm like running up and down the stairs all the time. The fridge is having to go for a smaller fridge was the one thing we were like, oh, but it's keeping us active. I guess there's that.
I'll tell you that one of these problems that we've been trying to figure out a way to solve, that I don't think there actually is a solution to, but we actually have space for a larger fridge than what we have. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's great. I would love to put in a larger fridge. There's no way to get it in the door of the RV.
Oh, neat.
So this is like one of those things that Steve and I are like, okay, but we can figure this out, right? We can figure this out. But how do you, I mean, I guess we could completely take down the wall of the front of our, yeah. That would be so we've got the size that we've got.
Well, I would love to move into equipment, because I know, like, I don't have a ton of equipment I love, but there are some things that I use every day. And so let's share some of that stuff. And I'm going to start by saying like not everything I love is equipment. And this is just one of my tips is like to pull in elements in your kitchen. Like I love how your kitchen is also your living space because it feels that way. And like you saw that yellow chair.
Yes.
Most often than not, if we're all in the kitchen, my daughter turns that chair. She's always reading in that chair. So, or my husband might be in the paper, but like it becomes part of the kitchen when it's turned this way. Another thing, like our little plants by the window, and this little this little guy we found in our yard when we were doing our renovation, and I just like he made us so happy. The girls were like, "The house left us a gift. The house left us a gift." And I swear, like every time I come to this kitchen, like I just kind of say hi to my people over here. um,
I love
Having
that.
a hanging basket for our fruit. This was just, we just got this on Amazon, but having space not on the counter. One of our, as you can see, like our design aesthetic is pretty minimal, and having a I cleaned the counter for you guys, but having that clean space is kind of where I find clarity. So not having a bunch of stuff. We've got one bowl on the counter and it's always got, tomatoes or whatever from the garden, but having a place to put the fruit without it taking up counter space, I love. And it's just like a cheap hanging basket from Amazon. And then over here, I know I showed you guys this island having a giant cutting board, and this is certainly a luxury. In my last kitchen, there would not have been space for a cutting board this big, but having this whole workspace. If you took my knife skills class, you'll see I have a little mat under here so that the cutting board doesn't shake around.
Smart. That's smart.
I have all of this space, and then one of my favorite things, equipment wise, is this drawer, and it's just filled with a whole bunch of tiny little bowls. And you would not believe how useful these little bowls are. I use them when I'm doing my mise en place, when I'm prepping dinner. The kids use them for snacks. I use them for like sauces and dips. Like we are using this drawer all the time for a little bit of storage. I love these little bowls. I don't know. They bring me a lot of joy. And then another one of my favorite tools, which you have to be maybe 5'9" or my husband's 6'4" to access,
Or have a stool.
or have a tool. These are pre-cut parchment sheets. I'm all about ease. Like people when you follow my recipes know that I love loads of flavor. I love loads of texture, but I also always trying to create recipes that are accessible and streamlined as possible. So having this one step of not having to tear parchment paper and have it curl up is such a time saver. And so, whenever I'm doing anything in the oven, the parchment paper is being put to use. And then I think the only other thing, like as far as equipment goes, my knives, which I just had sharpened last weekend. I hadn't had my knife sharpened in a couple of years, and it's like having a new set of knives. So y'all go sharpen your knives. Even though I hone my knives every day, it still was major. Um, and then there's two things in here that I use every day. My fish spatula, I use this for everything.
Yes.
And microplane. And then I think last but not least would be our toaster oven, because I do a lot of cooking in our toaster oven. And this, especially in the summer when I don't want to turn on the oven and heat up the house, and especially with the kids. I'm like roasting nuts in there all the time. Or last night we roasted delicata squash in there instead of turning the oven on. So instead of a toaster, we have that. We do have a microwave actually, but we put it all the way back here in this cabinet. And then this is another thing I really love. And you guys are sorry, this seems really anal, but it's a vacuum cleaner that plugs into the wall, because as much as I adore my kids, it's kind of like living with two animals. And so, and I mean, I'm just as problematic as I'm cooking all the time. But having like being able to be like, I'm just going to do a quick little vacuum from all of the crumbs on the floor, it makes it so much easier. We used to have to go in the basement and schlep up our vacuum cleaner to the kitchen and plug it in. And it was like a big barrier. And so that, we're not overly clean or anything like that, but having that access really is great. And then it's the fact that it's hidden back there is really.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah, so, one of the things on that note that I really love, and we didn't put this in, the RV came with this, I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well down here, is a vacuum.
Wow. Oh,
So, I can sweep everything right into the kitchen and then just sweep it into the
I mean, that's
just
really cool.
sucks it right in.
That is so cool.
So, yeah, I love it. I don't it's one of those things that I'm so used to, I don't even know how I'd live without
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so a few of the appliances that we use all the time, one of them you wouldn't need in a normal kitchen, but this water filter, this is a
Ah,
Berkey water filter. Most people think that we just drink a lot of coffee. That's a big coffee pot.
that's what I thought it was too. Totally.
It's a water filter. So one thing that you realize when you are traveling from place to place is that you have no idea what the standard of
Ah,
water is going to be at. We also do a lot of parking out in the middle of nowhere. There's all of these big chunks of public land, and you can just go park yourselves there for pretty much as long as you want. Steve put in a whole solar system, so we've got plenty of energy to run everything, and we have this huge fresh water tank. So we can put 100 gallons of fresh water in the RV, but we have to go fill it up from somewhere. And that's really when things can get a little sketchy. You show up at a gas station or whatever, and you're pumping water into your RV, and we have no idea what the quality of that water is. And so we put everything through that water filter.
ah,
We could go collect water from a stream or a lake and put it through that water filter, and
wow.
it would filter everything through. So that's indispensable. Absolutely love that. I already showed you my KitchenAid mixer. The other two appliances that stay out on our countertop all the time, they're both Ninja products. This is a carbonated water. Um, I don't even know what it's called. It injector. It creates carbonated water. We
Sure.
both we both really like LaCroix and just any sort of carbonated water. And we were just like, this is ridiculous how many cans we are
Oh,
going through. And so we bought this, and yeah,
smart.
and we use it all the time. And then my actual coffee pot, not the water filter, but my actual coffee pot. So those things stay out on the countertop all the time. The other thing that was really useful for me, and if anybody on here has a small kitchen and drawer space is limited, I put all of our utensils in this basket. Rather, because utensils take up a lot of drawer space.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to devote an entire drawer to utensils. And so having them out there in the corner, it does take up some counter space, but it's back in the
It's
corner.
pretty. And it looks nice.
Yeah, they're available all the time, and then they don't take up counter space. Same with all of my like wooden spoons and ladles and stuff out here in a basket. Again, it's something that if you have the drawer space for it, then that's great. But if you have limited drawer space,
Yeah.
it just takes up so much room.
Yeah.
Knives are another thing. We hung this strip back here behind the oven for the knives. Um, in a small space, having knives in a drawer is actually fairly dangerous if you're somebody like me who's just like reaching in and
Yep.
grabbing things and
Yep.
whatever. If they're not carefully laid out, that can be a problem. So so yeah, I really like that. And then we also this isn't really a appliance or whatever, but we hung this is my favorite bag. This is my don't be a dick bag. Um,
Yes, please.
but we just hung the bags there. It's like your baskets of fruit.
Yeah.
We usually keep a basket of fruit on our kitchen table, but there are things that just like free up so much space. And so things like dried nuts, or not dried nuts, dried fruit and nuts and like crackers. Those are things that we would have put in a pantry, but we don't have a pantry. So we put them in these bags that just hang right there. And if you get a bag that you like the look of and you hang it out there, then yeah, that can become an entire storage space all unto yourself.
I love that. And again, like that bag makes you happy. So why not
Right.
as part of the kitchen. One thing that I did want to mention that when you brought up your coffee maker, when we renovated the kitchen, which I'm like you, like I do not like that process. we had we lived in the dining room. At that point, like everything was sealed off and we did all of our cooking. My husband jerry rigged a sink outside and we did all of our cooking on like a hot plate. And we got this kettle. I'm a big tea drinker. I'm actually not a coffee drinker, but my husband does pour over. And having that kettle, it's one of my favorite things because we're making, even my husband's a big tea drinker. My kids are, we're heating up water all the time. And it so heats it up super fast. We're not waiting it for on the stovetop. So it's like one of those random things I never would have gotten. And then once we had it, I was like, this is making my life so much better.
Yeah, I think that's useful because I think all of us have those things that are simple little
Yeah.
improvements to just what we do all day, every day that just make our life just a tiny bit easier. Um, and yeah, when you find those little things,
Yeah.
it's a great.
That was even for our sink because I do what I do. And so when we are shooting recipes or testing a lot of recipes, a lot of stuff builds up. And especially when we're shooting, like I did my cookbook shoots here, we went for the biggest sink we could. And our plumber actually had some trouble because the pipes go so low, but it is a very big and very deep sink.
Huge.
I can put a ton of stuff in there while I'm shooting, and you can't even tell that the sink is full of dishes. So it doesn't slow me down having to stop. And I mean, I do try to like clean as I go when I can, but
Yeah.
having that big sink without a divider for me is like that just feels
That's
so
great.
good. Yeah.
That's fair. So when we renovated, we actually put in a slightly deeper sink as well.
Mhm.
It's not as deep as yours, but I was shocked at the difference that it
Yeah.
made. Having that extra depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we did that reminded me, we kept a piece of butcher block and cut it to fit over half the sink. And so I get this out almost every single day for things like I might be cooking something,
Yeah.
but I have our plates sitting here,
Mhm.
or just to get something out of the way and have that little bit of extra space. This is huge. I also use this sometimes as my standing work desk. It's the right height. I can put my computer here, especially if I'm on my computer and also working on
Yeah.
something in the kitchen at the same time. And so, yeah, just that little bit of extra counter space makes a huge, huge
That is
difference.
such a great tip, and that could be in any kitchen. I'm thinking about when we lived in the city in New York. It was like we had zero counter space in that kitchen, so it was like, how do you juggle? And that would have solved a lot of problems.
Yeah, and you don't want to cover up, or I don't want to cover up the sink completely. I
Mm.
know you can buy, you can buy certain things that will fit over a sink, but they tend to like really cover it up. And I
Mhm.
wanted use of
Yeah,
the sink while also, so yeah, so that made a big
yeah,
difference.
amazing. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like we've gone through so much, and I just like I think that it's so interesting to see how these spaces for both of our houses are like the center of our home. It looks like the kitchen is the center of your home as well. And so little things that we do to imbue that with love, it doesn't have to be a giant renovation. Oh my gosh. We loved our old kitchen, but it was problematic. I mean, cabinets were falling off the walls. There was literally, there was the floor under the sink was just black because the pipes were leaking and nobody could fix it. There was major problems. So we were kind of like forced into the renovation. But I do think living in a space for as long as you can, if unless you have a lot of insight. I'm not a designer, so living in this space before renovating it was just so important. I knew exactly how I wanted to function as a cook and as a family.
Yeah.
So it made it a lot more easy.
I totally agree. I mean, even things like where's going to be the most convenient place to put an outlet.
Yeah.
You kind of have to work in a space before you know that.
Yeah.
my husband Steve is very good with things like electrical and all things mechanical, and so he's put in outlets in places that just didn't have them, and it makes a huge difference. But had we not lived here for a little while before that, then I wouldn't have had a good sense for where the best spots were to put some of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, type them in. Also, you can always send a direct message, I think, to either Nikki
Mhm.
or I with
Yeah.
any questions about anything that we've talked about. But yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. I love that now I have such a sense of what it's like to be in your space and in your kitchen.
Same. And I want you to come live. You got to come visit. So you
Yes, I know. Okay, we're gonna do that for sure.
Okay.
For sure. We'll just bring our entire house to you.
Yeah. I can do that. If you can get up our mountain road, it's a little steep.
We don't know how to pack light. We just bring everything we own with us everywhere we go.
That's actually a problem of mine. I tend to do that too, but
You just have to have an RV, and then you're like, well, I'm just gonna bring it all.
just bring.
Well, Nikki, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate you giving your time and giving us a tour of your kitchen. And your kitchen is beautiful. I love everything that you've done with it. And
Twice.
thank you.
Amazing. Yay. Well, yes, like Rebecca said, shoot us emails if you have any questions about any of the design, anything else, anything. We're here for
Yeah,
you.
that's right. All right. Well, have a good day, everyone. Thanks again, Nikki. And see you all next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.